With regard to laws affecting financing, we need to make note of the Truth in Lending Act and Regulation Z. Regulation Z requires that when a loan is secured by a residence, the lender must disclose the lender's finance charges to the borrower. In other words, the lender must disclose the true cost of obtaining credit, or APR. APR means annual percentage rate. APR is the effective rate that includes the loan rate plus the total amount of finance charges. And we express that as a percentage. APR will always be higher than the interest rate of the loan. The borrower has a 3-day rescission right on home equity loans and refinances. The right of rescission, the 3-day right of rescission, does not apply when purchasing a first home, or if it's a first loan, if it's a purchase money loan, purchasing a vacation home, or when using a construction loan. The 3-day rescission right applies only to home equity loans and refinances. With advertising, the price and/or APR are the only specific terms allowed in the advertising without triggering full disclosure. So Regulation Z requires that advertising only contain the APR. Any other terms included in the advertising will trigger full disclosure. So if you mention one of these terms, you got to mention everything. That's why they call them trigger terms. So if you mention the percentage of down payment or the amount of installment payment or the number of payments or anything like that, if you mention any of these items, you have to mention all of the items. Those are triggering terms. If any of these terms are used in the advertising, the lender must disclose the cash price, the required down payment, the number, amount, and due dates of the payments, the annual percentage rate, the total of all payments to be made over the life of the loan, and the interest rate of the loan. In other words, if you mention any one of these terms, you have to mention everything. Regulation Z applies to all consumer loans, including mortgage loans, but it does not apply to loans to corporations, doesn't apply to business or commercial loans, and it does not apply to seller financing. The Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, or RESPA, it is a federal act or federal law, and its purpose is to ensure that the seller and the buyer are fully informed of all the settlement costs. RESPA, or the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, prohibits kickbacks among real estate licensees, lenders, and title companies. The Truth in Lending Act and the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act are both federal acts that require disclosure. In 2015, key Truth in Lending Act and RESPA disclosures for sellers and buyers were integrated into one integrated disclosure called the TRID form. TRID means TILA and RESPA integrated disclosure. And what the TRID form did was it took the disclosure forms took the disclosures required by RESPA and the disclosures required by the Truth in Lending Act and put them into one disclosure. And so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau oversees the TRID disclosures. And the way it works is 2 new disclosure forms were created by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And the first disclosure form is called the loan estimate. It takes the disclosures from both the Truth in Lending and RESPA and provides an estimate of the costs to the borrower. The loan estimate must be delivered to the borrower no later than 3 days after the lender's receipt of the loan app. Usually the lender will give the loan estimate to the borrower right then when they apply for the loan, but the law does allow the lender 3 days to give the loan estimate to the borrower. The next TRID disclosure is the closing disclosure, where the loan estimate estimated the settlement costs. The closing disclosure shows the actual loan and settlement costs. The closing disclosure must be received by the borrower at least 3 days before closing, and the lender must have proof that the buyer received it. Now, if the APR increases, or if a prepayment penalty is added, or if the loan type changes after the borrower receives the closing disclosure, then a new closing disclosure is required. The TRID requirements apply to all federally related residential loans, except home equity lines of credit. TRID does not apply. Loans for mobile homes, if the mobile home is not affixed to land, TRID does not apply. TRID does not apply to reverse mortgages or seller-financed loans. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act, or ECOA, prohibits discrimination in all consumer credit transactions, including real estate loans, and it prohibits discrimination based on an applicant's race, religion, color, sex, national origin, marital status, age, or receipt of public assistance.